Just as a heads up, I will not be making any Trump-related jokes throughout the duration of this review. You know, aside from kind of this one, darn it all.
Having now become representatives of the planet, the Precure were given an assignment by Abraham to act as guides for an inspector from the Hoshizora galaxy. Though really, it's the least they can do for the poor guy after busting him a few episodes back.
Twinkle imaginationを探すのに忙しいんだけど。
Don't worry about too much, Yuri. The writing team's pretty much on autopilot until Murayama gets back.
Elena in particular wanted to take on this job as her mother was a translator and she was hoping some of that rubbed off on her. The next day, they awaited the arrival of their guest, but for whatever reason, he seemed to be running late. He did eventually arrive, though not in the most graceful of manners. The Precure approached the ship that at first looked like a xenomorph egg, but instead of a facehugger, it opened up like a flower, revealing a...
No. Okay. Toy, you can't be serious. I mean, what is that?
He's an anthropomorphic cactus wearing a sombrero and a shirt with the colors of the Mexican flag all wrapped up in a sarabe. Are we supposed to believe this guy really is an alien from another planet and not just an amalgamation of several Hispanic stereotypes? He looks like the Slowpoke Rodriguez to Marvel vs. Capcom's Mingo.
Look, I honestly don't give a hoot about being politically correct or anything like that, but come on guys, you have to be at least a little subtle.
Anyway, Rodriguez's name was supposedly Saburo, which on top of being a very Japanese-sounding name, also has the first two syllables of Saboten or cactus in Japanese.
Because again, all alien languages just so happen to match up really well with one of our planet's many languages.
Still, whatever the language, talking wasn't going to help as their prickly friend came from a planet where no one could talk, including himself. Thus, our heroines had to rely on sign language.
Hikaru.
So, after a bit that hopefully won't set off the Twitter mobs, Elena realized that she was finally getting a focus episode and took charge. She correctly deciphered that the walking plant desired water. This pleased their visitor, who also happened to enjoy greeting his brethren from a different planet. Take note of this little bit, by the way, it'll be important in just a minute. For now though, the Precure showed him around their usual hangouts, including Ryo's observatory. Geez, this old man's gonna have all kinds of stories to tell in the retirement home. As well as the town square where they likely had to convince everyone that he was just a Coco cosplayer.
Wow, even Yuri's catching on to this dude's lack of subtlety.
Actually, she was pointing out the fact that for an investigator, he was partaking in the sights a little too much, as though he was just a plain old tourist. Well, no time for that, not at all, so a bit of foreshadowing, as Elena decided to show her family's flowers shop to Saburo, and yeah, you can guess where this is going. As Elena took the guy to a shop full of plants that had their roots trimmed off.
Which, you know, considering he's a plant and everything, that's pretty much the equivalent of this.
I'm sorry. Was that your auntie?
Goes without saying, this was a big mistake on Elena's part, as after seeing Carlos sell a bouquet and her try to give him a flower, Saburo walked angrily back to his ship. Granted, it was an honest mistake, but also one that could have easily been caught after seeing Saburo literally bow to the flowers earlier. Thus, as is often the case, what might be considered a kind gesture in one culture might also be considered an offensive one in another. This ended up bothering Elena for the rest of the day. She tried asking her mother about how she dealt with negotiations with people of different cultures. Obviously, being voiced by a bilingual voice actress, talking to her clientele wasn't an issue. It was actually understanding them that was important.
It doesn't matter which magical girl anime it is, Chris Yukine is always best girl.
The next day, the Precure received an explanation as to why Saburo arrived late. As it turned out, the cactus wasn't the real Saburo. No, as it turned out, that name was meant to be a slightly more direct pun, as the real inspector was lazy on the job, or Saburo as the term goes.
This show has more puns than Joshiraku. Really underrated comedy anime, by the way.
With that, the inspection had been cancelled, and someone was likely going to face serious charges for wasting taxpayers' money. Thus, the Precure were technically off the hook, as they had no obligation to take care of the fake. However, for one girl of mixed ethnicity, partying on such a bitter note with their alien friend wasn't the least bit acceptable. Her friends backed her up, and they went to see Saburo. Yeah, I'll just stick with calling him that. The alien in question was fixing up his ship while also reflecting on his travels throughout the galaxy. As it turned out, he had been rejected by many planets either due to his appearance or the fact that he would likely hurt anyone he came in contact with. And yet, here he was, having rejected the few people who treated him kindly over what was an honest mistake.
You know, I'll say right now, Saburo's design aside, this has been a pretty great episode.
It teaches an important lesson about respecting other people's culture all through a character whom the Precure, and by extension the audience, are unable to fully comprehend due to the highest of language barriers.
I honestly can't think of too many negatives about it. Oh, there's one.
So yeah, Tenjo sicked her mooks on Saburo because I guess she had nothing better to do with her day. Seriously, judging by her dialogue, she didn't even seem to know that he was an acquaintance of the Precure. And off-screen, she turned him into...
Oh, so that's what the Mega Evolution of Maractus looks like. FYI, I also considered Cacturn, come to think of it, why are there two different lines of cactus Pokemon?
The Precure engaged Mega Maractus, again starting with a barrage of finishers because that never gets repetitive, but were all deflected thanks to Spike Shield. Elena tried to reach Saburo, while Tenjo not at all subtly hinted at the episode's moral because apparently that's her only job in this show. However, while words were ineffective, there was one universal sign that was able to reach the guy. Thus, one full cult chant later, the Precure rescued Saburo, and Tenjo left without even providing a cheesy villain one-liner. This is why Kapar beat you in the popularity polls, lady. With his ship fixed, Saburo was about to leave, though not before making amends with Elena. He forced himself to go through some photosynthesis and gave her a parting gift.
So, Elena giving him a flower is bad, and yet him giving her a flower is a-okay. Alright.
Then again, I guess it's not as bad in this case, as it wasn't a flower that Saburo didn't know, and rather a part of himself that he was leaving with Elena, and you know what, let's just wrap things up.
This episode honestly kind of surprised me. I mean, I saw Saburo's design last week, so I was expecting them to hammer in the whole Hispanic immigrant thing into our heads, and yet, no, they instead chose to focus more on a message about the importance of race relations, so good on you guys for teaching the kids something important in a fairly subtle manner.
It also goes without saying that this was a much needed focus episode for Elena. Granted, it still doesn't at all make up for her severe lack of screen time, especially this far into the series, but at least they're doing something with her character. In fact, this is probably one of the best applications of the fact that she was half Mexican. While they haven't really shown her struggling with her mixed ethnicity, it could be inferred that she has a desire to build relationships with people of different cultures because of it and her mother's occupation. And much like many of Yuji Kobayashi's episodes, some of the best parts of this were just characters talking to each other, in particular Elena and Kaede. Though of course, the other highlight was naturally the cactus alien called Saburo. As much as I laughed at his not at all solid design, I think the animators did a great job making one of the most expressive characters in spite of lacking a mouth to both talk and emote with. On a side note, there seemed to be a lot of Hispanic animators this week. Don't want to make too many assumptions, but maybe his design was their idea, making my Speedy Gonzales reference a little more on the nose than I originally thought. Whatever the case, I think they did a great job getting their message across through this character who couldn't communicate verbally, and thus others just had to be sensitive to certain visual cues. Overall, while yet another inconsequential filler episode and nothing too innovative really, it was still good, which with this series it's either take it or leave it. Only notable complaints were yet another underwhelming fight, though kind of used to that with Tenjo at this point. And whatever Hikaru was trying to do here. Get it? Because the one sci-fi nerd in the team thinks the flamingo dance is a universal concept.
If you haven't seen it yet, I just uploaded the second part of my thoughts regarding the recent Precure popularity polls hosted by the NHK, this time covering the side characters across the franchise. I actually had plans of uploading it earlier in the week, but it took a little longer than the first video, most likely due to me blowing out the mic a few times. Yeah, it was one of those kinds of lists. Look forward to the final part, maybe sometime later this week. I'm not making any promises. And until then though, for now my friends, and you know, this was a good episode, so may as well end it on a good note.